These are 12 forgotten curing tricks every frontier family used to keep their meat. Back when getting it wrong meant your family starved before spring. Before we go on, pull up a seat by the fire and subscribe to the Root Cellar, because I've got a whole line of these forgotten stories coming, and I don't want you to miss the next one. If you've ever wondered how folks kept a whole hog edible with no icebox in sight, stay close to these coals. Now picture it. The autumn kill is down. Pork and venison hanging heavy from the rafters of a little log cabin, the smell of blood and cold air in the room. And every ounce of that meat has one job. It has to carry a family clear through to spring. Get it wrong, and you starve in the dark months. Get it right, and one single hunt feeds you for months on end. The autumn kill had to last until spring. There was no store to run to. There was just you, your hands, and what you knew. So let's start where they started. Salt. Trick 1 was the salt box, a simple wooden trough hewn from planks, and inside it, thick beds of coarse salt. The old folks laid each cut down and buried it deep. Salt under it, salt over it, salt packed into every fold, so no air could touch the meat anywhere. Air is what spoils a ham. Bury it in salt, and the air never gets its chance. Picture that salt box in your own hands. Cold, coarse, heavy. That's where every winter's eating began. Trick 2 was the dry rub cure. This one took patience, and it took a strong back. You took your salt, and you worked it into the hams and the shoulders by hand, right into the meat, day after day after day. And here's the why of it. The thing that mattered most. That salt pulled the water right out of the meat. Slow and steady, it drew the moisture out through the surface, drop by drop. And spoilage needs water to live. Take the water away, and rot has nothing left to feed on. A weathered old hand rubbing salt into a ham week after week wasn't just working. He was starving the rot before it ever started. Trick 3 was saltpeter, just a pinch of it, measured tiny from a little tin. The settlers reached for this curing salt for 2 reasons. It held the meat's good red color instead of letting it go gray, and it beat back the worst of the rot that salt alone might miss. Now I tell you this as history, the way it was done around the fire. Saltpeter is strong stuff, and today we've got modern rules for a reason, so mind them in your own kitchen. But here's the thing. Salt could only pull the water. It could not carry a ham through the long months all on its own. For that, the old folks turned to a strong salt pickle in a crock, and a single egg floating on top that told them a secret about the brine. That egg is where we pick up. That floating egg. Drop one into a crock of salt pickle and watch it. When the water grew salty enough to hold the meat safe, the egg rose up and showed its face above the surface. That was trick 4, brining. The old-timers' test, with no thermometer anywhere in reach. So the meat went down into that crock. Hams and shoulders pushed under the pickle till every inch was covered, and the salt did its slow work again, pulling the water right out of the flesh, day after day, until spoilage had nothing left to feed on. But the crock had a problem. The pieces at the bottom sat crushed under the weight. The ones on top floated loose. Cure them like that, and you'd get a ham that was perfect on one end and going bad on the other. So the old folks did something clever. Trick 5, the overhaul. Every week or so, they'd reach in, pull every piece out of the brine, and stack them back in fresh, bottom to top, top to bottom. Hands cold and wet, restacking the whole barrel so the pieces that had been buried now rode high, and the ones that rode high went under. Every cut got its fair turn in the pickle, even curing top to bottom. Simple work, and it saved the whole barrel. But here's the hard truth. Salt alone wasn't enough. Not for a long winter. A strong brine could hold a ham for a while. But the months ahead were long and mean, and the old folks knew salt needed a partner. So the tension turns now, away from the crock, toward the fire, to smoke. And if you can almost smell that hickory smoke curling through the rafters right now, you already understand why this worked. Trick 6, the smokehouse. A small log shed, tight-built, out back behind the cabin. Inside, hams and sides hung high in the rafters, up in the dark where the smoke gathered thick and slow. Tell me you've never smelled a smokehouse in winter. Once you have, you never forget it. That deep, sweet, woody breath that soaks into everything. Trick 7, the cold smoke. And this is the part folks get wrong today. It was never a hot fire, never enough to cook. Just a low smolder of hickory and applewood coals down on the floor, kept barely alive for days at a stretch. That cool smoke drifted up around the meat, dried the surface, laid down flavor, and sealed the outside against the world. Slow, patient. A whole ham could hang in that soft haze for the better part of a week. And trick 8. The wood mattered more than you'd think. Hardwoods only. Oak, hickory, a little applewood for sweetness. A clean cure, clean smoke. Never pine or resinous woods. Those turn the meat bitter and black with soot, the sap smoking foul and ruining a whole winter's work in a night. The old-timers knew their woodpile like they knew their own hands. But even a perfectly smoked ham had enemies waiting. Mice, flies, the damp, warm days that creep in at the edges of the season. So the old folks wrapped and hid their hams, then carried them down into the cool and the dark, where the last 3 tricks decided whether the whole winter's eating survived. That cool, dark place is where we go next, down into the cool and the dark. But first, they guarded the finished ham. That's trick 9, and it's a simple one. A good ham, hung right out in the open, is an invitation. Mice will gnaw it. Flies will find it. So the old folks wrapped each one tight in clean cloth, then a layer of stout paper over that, and tied it off snug. Then they hung it high from a beam, up in the shadows near the rafters, where no critter could climb and no fly could land. Only then did they carry it below. Which brings us to trick 10, the root cellar and springhouse. Down under the cabin, dug into the hillside, the air stayed cool and even no matter what the weather did up top. Stone walls, a dirt floor, a steady chill that never spiked and never froze. And where a family had running water, they built a springhouse right over the cold stream and set their crocks and cuts down in that constant cool. That even temperature was everything. It held the meat and the crocks steady through the warm days that sneak in at the edges of the season, when a smokehouse alone couldn't have saved a thing. Now trick 11, and this one folks always forget. Rendered lard. When the old-timer boiled down the fat, he saved crocks of that white grease for one job. He'd pack cured sausages and cracklings and small cuts down into the crock, then pour the warm lard right over the top until every piece was buried. When it cooled, it set hard and white, a solid seal around each one. No air, no light, no moisture. Nothing could reach that meat. Packed under lard in a cool cellar, sausages and cracklings kept clean and good clear into spring. And the 12th trick is the oldest of them all. Reading the meat. No thermometer. No chart on the wall. Just the nose and the eyes a man spent a lifetime training. All winter long, the old-timer would go down into that dark cellar, lift a ham off the beam, and put it right to his nose. He knew the smell of a good cure the way you know your own kitchen, and he knew the smell of one going wrong. If a smell like that would stop you cold, then you'd have made a fine old-timer. He never gambled the family's health on a piece gone bad. He trusted his senses, and his senses were right. So look at the whole chain now. Salt to pull the water out, so spoilage had nothing to feed on. Smoke to seal the surface and give it flavor. Cold and lard to hold it all steady through the long months. 12 tricks, each doing one job. And together they turned a single autumn kill into a full winter of eating. That was the whole trick of survival. One hunt, stretched clear to spring, on nothing but salt, smoke, cold, and a good man's nose. These were the quiet secrets that stood between a frontier family and an empty belly. No store to run to, no icebox humming in the corner. Just the old ways, passed hand to hand around the fire. I share them here as history, the way they were told to me, and I'll say it plain. Always follow modern food safety rules in your own kitchen. Which of these 12 would you have leaned on hardest through a hard winter? Sit with that a while. Stay close to the coals, and I'll have the next forgotten story waiting for you.